Where's the ATM card? Let me take care of it, Jack said to me as I struggled with cancer and stayed in the hospital. He had a smug look on his face, and I could tell he had bad intentions. Now that he had the card, I told him, just so you know, there's $500,000 in there, be careful with it. I trusted him, not only as my husband but as part of the plan I had been making. I told him where the ATM card was, knowing the risks, but I was ready to turn things around. When I got home later to grab some of my things, I found divorce papers on the table, just like I feared. The ATM card was gone. The plan had worked. To most people, it would have seemed like everything was lost, but for me, it was just the start of my revenge. I'm Sarah, a housewife in my 40s. At first, Jack and I had a happy marriage, but things changed when I discovered Jack wasn't who he pretended to be. His true nature started to show just 2 months after we got married. He acted like the perfect husband, but deep down, he believed that a wife's job was to serve her husband and put him first, no matter what. He always made me feel small with his cruel words. You should listen to your husband, he would say, and if I didn't follow his demands, he'd call me a failure. You can't even listen to your husband? You're a terrible wife. His demands never ended. He made me wash his clothes separately and clean his room first, no matter how unreasonable. Even meals were a problem. He would only eat what he felt like eating. A wife's job is to serve her husband's food, he'd say. Even if I'd cooked his favorite dish, it was impossible to keep up with him. If Jack didn't want something, he never told me in advance, but if I made a mistake, he'd get mad at me. I was fed up with his childish behavior. It was exhausting, but I couldn't ignore him because every mistake I made things worse at home, and our relationship fell apart. One day, I was doing chores when I suddenly passed out. I fell to the ground, and a neighbor heard the noise and called for help. I was rushed to the hospital, where they ran tests and found out I had cancer. The stress probably caused it, and I felt weak and dizzy all the time. A nurse had to help me sit up. The doctor asked me to contact my family, but my mom had passed away years ago, and my dad couldn't come because he needed care. My brother and his wife lived too far away for them to help quickly. I tried calling Jack, but all I got was his voicemail. I left a message, but I knew he had probably turned off notifications for my messages. He didn't care. I wanted to go home and get some things, but the doctor told me to wait. Hours later, Jack sent a short message saying, "I'll come tomorrow. Wait for me." There was no concern for my health, and I wasn't sure if he would bring what I needed. His indifference hurt even more. Earlier, I had asked Jack to bring my things that day, clothes and toiletries I needed. I sent several messages, but he didn't reply. Finally, after a long time, Jack read my messages and replied with, "Shut up and be quiet." I couldn't believe it. I was in the hospital, fighting cancer, and he had the nerve to say that. It was disappointing, but honestly, I didn't expect much from him. True to form, he didn't come to the hospital that day. A small part of me still hoped he would, making my first day at the hospital even harder. The nurses felt sorry for me, which made it worse. The next day, around noon, Jack showed up as promised. He casually said, "You don't look as sick as I thought. I thought you'd be weaker." His comment made me furious. "Just put the bags down and leave." I snapped. Jack looked confused. "What bags?" he asked. I couldn't believe it. Wasn't he supposed to bring my things? My anger boiled over. "What's that look for?" he asked, clearly annoyed. His unreasonable behavior pushed me to my limit, but I did my best to stay calm. "Why are you here if you didn't bring my things?" "There's no point," I asked, my frustration clear. "I had another errand," Jack said, sounding confused by my angry question. "Another errand? What's that?" I pressed, feeling drained from stress and lack of sleep. Jack hesitated, like he wasn't sure whether to say something. "If you have something to say, just say it," I urged him. Finally, with a laugh, Jack revealed what was really on his mind. "Where's the ATM card? Let me take care of it. Trust me." Now it clicked. He wasn't here to help me. He was here to get control of the ATM card and take our savings for himself. His selfishness, even in this moment, made me sigh. Jack just smiled, like nothing else mattered. I couldn't stand his behavior anymore, so I decided to take action. "There's $500,000 in there. Please take care of it," I told him, my voice firm. Jack's face showed a mix of surprise and excitement. To explain, both Jack and I had been regular office workers before we got married, never making a lot of money. So, where did this money come from? The answer: stocks. After becoming a housewife, I started investing, following a friend's advice. While managing the house, I made a big profit in the stock market. I had originally planned to keep the $500,000 a secret because I knew Jack would be selfish if he found out. But now, wanting revenge, I decided to reveal it. Jack's reaction to the large amount confirmed my thoughts. I smiled gently at him and said, "The ATM card is in the third drawer of the shelf. You can take it." Jack looked shocked for a moment but quickly pulled himself together. "Got it," he said, sounding excited. He had walked right into my trap. "I'll leave the rest to you," I said as he left the room, thinking everything was going according to his plan. But withdrawing such a large sum of money wouldn't be easy. Luckily, it was a holiday, and the bank was closed. Jack had work the next day, so he wouldn't be able to withdraw the money until the evening, which gave me time to put my revenge plan into action. After talking with my doctor, I was allowed to leave the hospital briefly the next day. My plan was set. But I couldn't wait until then. I decided to go home to get my things. Even though I missed home, the real reason for going wasn't just to grab a few items. I knew Jack would be at work, leaving the house empty. When I entered, I saw two papers on the living room table, a divorce application and a letter that had clearly been written in a rush. "Sorry for the rough times, but let's get divorced. Please fill out and submit the divorce application," the letter said. With caution, I checked the shelf and confirmed my suspicion. The ATM card was gone. Jack had taken it. Normally, losing such a large sum of money might be upsetting, but I couldn't help but smile. Mission accomplished, I whispered to myself. If Jack had been there, he would have been furious, wondering what I meant. First, I filled out the divorce papers. Then, I grabbed what I needed for my hospital stay and left the house we had shared for so many years. Of course, I dropped off the divorce papers on my way out, cutting all ties with him. Back at the hospital, I prepared for the challenges ahead, discussing things with my doctor. Later, while resting in my hospital room, I saw several missed calls from Jack, along with some messages asking how to withdraw the money. Not wanting to disturb my roommate, I went to a common area where I could make calls and return Jack's call. "Finally, I can't withdraw the money. Please tell me how to do it." Jack's voice sounded more frantic than I expected. He clearly needed the $500,000 right away for something urgent, but I didn't feel obligated to help him. "If you can't withdraw it, then just give up," I said coldly, my voice betraying my annoyance. "Don't be so harsh. We were married, after all. Maybe we should help each other out," Jack pleaded. "What are you talking about? Helping each other?" I snapped. His actions showed no kindness, only greed. There was no way I was going to entertain his appeal to old emotions. "Are you having trouble getting the money?" I asked, trying to stay detached. "Yes, I need the $500,000 urgently. Please help me." Jack's voice wavered with desperation. It was the weakest I'd ever heard him. I almost wanted to laugh, but instead, I decided to confront him. "The method is right, but the ATM card you have now won't work anymore," I said bluntly. Jack's voice went higher in disbelief. "What do you mean? The card should work. Normally, an ATM card would work, but the one you have is useless now," I told him firmly. "Why?" he asked, clearly confused. "Because I reported it stolen earlier today," I explained calmly. "The ATM card is just a useless piece of plastic now." There was a long silence. I knew Jack was shocked. Earlier that day, I had gone to the bank and reported the card as stolen. Jack had taken it without permission, planning to steal the $500,000 for himself. I had done the right thing by reporting it, and now the card couldn't access the money. Plus, our marriage was over, so he had no right to the money. "How does it feel to be outsmarted by the woman you look down on?" I couldn't help but add, feeling a little satisfaction. "I don't know why you wanted the $500,000, but I'm not foolish enough to hand it over under these circumstances," I continued, exhausted by his pleading. "I need the $500,000 right now. Please, I'll do anything. Just give me the money, Donna, please," he begged, his desperation obvious. I still couldn't understand why he needed the money so badly. "Why do you suddenly need $500,000? What have you done?" I asked, the silence heavy as I waited for his answer. Jack hesitated before he spoke. 2 days ago, when I found out about the $500,000, I quit my job on impulse, thinking I'd have a fortune. I spent most of it gambling and now owe $300,000. The lenders want it back within a week, or I'm in trouble. I thought the ATM card would fix everything, but now it's useless, and I have no idea how to pay it back," Jack explained, his voice trembling with fear. I had been living lavishly, thinking the money was mine, but now, without it, my future is uncertain, he admitted, his desperation clear. He had even left the divorce papers and shamelessly contacted me for help. I don't know what's going to happen if this keeps up. Jack's voice shook with panic, and it seemed like he was telling the truth. His reckless actions made me sigh deeply. Jack had done the unthinkable. Tempted by the idea of a large sum of money, he had carelessly spent $300,000 in just a few days. The old me, the one who once tolerated his terrible behavior and lived modestly with him, might have considered helping, but now, I was a different person. There was no love left for Jack, and no matter how much he begged, I felt no pity, only a sense of amusement at how foolish he was to think I cared. But Jack didn't give up. "Please help me, you're the only one I have left," he begged desperately. His pleas were starting to grate on my nerves. I wanted to be rid of him and focus on my recovery. This mess was entirely of his making. If he had shown any concern for me when I asked him to bring my things, maybe I would have considered sharing some of the $500,000 with him, but instead, he'd chosen this path. "I'm sorry, but I have no intention of giving you the $500,000 or helping you. This is your problem now," I replied firmly, my tone cold and unyielding. "After all this time of not acting like a husband, it's too late to ask for help now, just because we're still technically married. Don't be so cruel. We were married, after all. Our long relationship doesn't just disappear with a divorce." Jack tried to appeal to our past. "What relationship?" I shot back. "You've always used me, making excuses to manipulate everything to your benefit. I refuse to waste another minute on you. I'm not giving you the $500,000, no matter how much you beg." Jack's desperation only grew. "Please, Sarah, I'm begging you, you're the only one who can help me. If you leave me, I don't know what will happen to me." His tone was full of blame, but it was Jack's reckless spending that had gotten him into this mess. If only he had been responsible, he wouldn't be in such a dire situation. "If you hadn't cut me off, thinking you had money to fall back on, none of this would have happened," he said. "Stop making excuses. You're dealing with the consequences of your own actions. You need to handle it on your own," I told him firmly, ending the call. I ignored his many follow-up calls and blocked his contact, ensuring no more communication. With the divorce papers filed, Jack and I were officially strangers. I embraced my newfound freedom and focused on my fight against cancer, which, after a long struggle, I finally overcame. When I was discharged from the hospital, a friend told me that Jack had disappeared. Desperate after losing contact with me, he tried borrowing money from his in-laws and friends. However, his urgent requests for $300,000 raised suspicions, and no one agreed to lend him anything. His whereabouts became a mystery, but it was clear that he was going through a lot more hardship than I could have imagined. A sense of satisfaction washed over me. After recovering, I moved out of the house I had shared with Jack, found a new place, and began working from home. I reveled in my independence, and thankfully, my finances were secure. Occasionally, friends asked if I would consider finding new love. The memories of my tumultuous life with Jack made me hesitant to remarry. I preferred the freedom of living on my own.